It's quite common to talk about daily routines in English exams and also in casual conversations you might have with native speakers of English. In this podcast, you'll learn some advanced vocabulary that goes beyond the words get up, work, eat, study, go to bed, so that you can talk about your daily routines a lot more effectively. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, especially if you're a new listener. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, mate?
I'm feeling well, and I'm looking forward to podcasting. I've been revived by that refreshing cup of coffee you have. Speaking of routines, it's kind of part of our routine, isn't it? It's not a daily routine, but when we do meet for podcasts, we always record one or two, then stop and have a coffee, a biscuit, of course, because Craig and I both love biscuits, and then we carry on. It's part of our podcasting routine, isn't it?
It is. And I was a bit disappointed with the biscuits today. I thought those chocolate biscuits were not particularly chocolatey and a bit too hard, even after dipping them and dunking them in the coffee. So I wasn't happy with the biscuits today.
I'm with you there. I like a biscuit which will crumble a bit, and those were too crunchy for me.
They were too crunchy, and we will not be accepting any sponsorship deals from those biscuits. And I won't be buying them again.
Hey, Craig, wouldn't that be a dream come true? Can you imagine if we got to sponsor us Jaffa Cakes or McVitie's Digestive or something? Wow. And we got like a lifetime supply or something free. Wouldn't that be great?
That would take the biscuit, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be a custom cream come true. First this week, we have a voice message from Diana from Ecuador.
Hi Craig, my name is Diana and I am from Ecuador. It's a pleasure to introduce myself to you, to be honest. I've been listening to your podcast for about a week now and I must express how incredibly valuable they have been. I feel so delighted to know that tomorrow we have a sketching meeting. I recently listened to your last episode about the correct usage of the prepositions actually. Moreover, I'd like to mention something else. In less than a month, on December 15th to be more precise, I will be taking the CO Advanced English exam, and this is one of the primary reasons I've been listening to your podcast recently. And I'm using them to further enhance my vocabulary and listening comprehension. And I've been also diligently noting down new words and expressions as well as grammar structures that are unfamiliar to me. Well, before I say goodbye, I want to mention that I've already signed up for your Patreon as a way to financially support you guys. I deeply appreciate the work you do. Thank you once again for sharing your expertise, and I truly look forward to continuing to learn from you. Fancy meeting you up tomorrow morning. Take care.
Well, thank you, Diana, for your lovely message. A very fluent and very effective message. And I did speak to Diana recently, a couple of days ago. She's a fairly new AIRC-aholic. So, Diana, I don't know if you know what an AIRC-aholic is. You might know what an alcoholic is, someone who drinks too much, or a workaholic, someone who works too much. Well, an AIRC-aholic, AIRC, Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig, is a person who is addicted to our podcast. So welcome and thank you for becoming a Patreon subscriber or about to become a Patreon subscriber. Reza, any comments on Diana's message?
That was a really good message, Diana, and your pronunciation was fantastic. And I didn't notice any grammatical mistake or structural mistake at all. Just one or two things though. You used the word moreover to show addition, and that's not wrong. However, I thought it was a bit too formal for this context. There's no need to use such a formal word.
It's more common in writing, isn't it?
Yeah, more common in writing particularly, or very formal speaking. So when we speak, most of the time, we would use a word like also, or another thing is, or as well as that, or on top of that. Something like that would be a bit more typical in spoken English.
Absolutely, yeah. And another comment, I know that you were pushed for time. There's only 90 seconds on these messages, but in general, I would advise you to slow down when you're speaking. You speak very quickly and very effectively and very fluently. I think if you slowed down a bit, maybe started thinking about stressing some words, using effective pauses in certain places, some intonation, just slowing down a bit might make your speech a little bit more effective. And be careful of the pronunciation of expertise. At the end of your message, you said expertise. Repeat that, expertise. So thanks so much for your message, Diana. All the best for the exam in December, the C1, and let us know how it goes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, Craig, let's talk about our routines then.
I'm excited about this because I like talking about habits, routines, even rituals. I think they're very interesting.
Are you a creature of habit?
I try to be. We'll get into that a bit later, but I do like habits, developing habits, changing bad ones for good ones, or at least trying to. And I think habits very much show us who we are. If we look at what we do every day, isn't there a quotation, you are what you do, or something like that? So your habits reflect the kind of person you are, I think. So we've broken this into 4 sections, this routine discussion, and the idea is that it will give you some more advanced vocabulary so that you can speak about your daily routines when you need to, either in exams or if you're just chatting with friends, with native speakers. So morning routine, lunchtime routine, afternoon routine, and evening routine kind of chops up or breaks up the day into 4 sections. So we'll tell you what we do at those particular times of day and compare our routines and explain some vocabulary. Shall I start or would you like to start, Reza?
You go first, Craig.
Okay. So it takes me a while to wake up in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I'm not an early bird. I don't tend to get up really early, and it takes me a while to get going. That expression, to get going, means to start to feel alive, to come to, you could say, to wake up, to come to be conscious. It takes me a while. I sit with a cup of coffee in the morning. I like to be quiet when I wake up. And I like to do a word game on my phone called Wordle. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's Wrodle. Do you know that app, Reza?
I tried it a few times and I really liked it, but I just never got into the habit of doing it every day. But it is great fun, I know.
I find that it helps to wake up my brain because I start thinking what the word could be and different possibilities. So I like to get some kind of activity to wake me up before I sit down and start working. So Wordle is part of my morning routine. Then I tend to tidy up. I look at my desk, tidy up the kitchen. Tidy up means put everything in its place, make sure everything's neat and tidy. Those 2 words like to go together, neat and tidy, neat and tidy. Maybe I'll sweep the floor if it's dirty. And then another phrasal verb, to potter about. So I'm just pottering about, just looking at things, putting things in their place from the day before. I potter about for another 5 or 10 minutes before finally sitting down at my desk and getting down to work. To get down to work means to start working, to focus on things I need to do. Focus on, make sure you've got that preposition correct after focus. Focus on my work. So I check my calendar, make sure that I am aware of any fixed important events that are going to happen during the day, and then I plan my work around those fixed activities. Maybe it's a doctor's appointment, maybe it's a lesson that I cannot move, that I have to do. So I have those fixed appointments on my calendar, and then my to-do list of more flexible things fits around those appointments. So I'm lesson planning in the morning, podcast notes, anything that needs deep thought and concentration. And then round about 11, That's my mid-morning break. I do a similar thing with Reza when we're podcasting. We have a coffee. My breakfast is usually toast in the middle of the morning. We can call it 11s. It's round about 11 o'clock. There's an English expression, 11s. That's the snack you have in the middle of the morning. And for me, it's usually toast.
So, Craig, don't you have any breakfast before your 11s?
Yeah, before my coffee, I usually have some fruit. So that might be some grapes or an orange or a piece of fruit in the morning before I have the coffee, because you correctly said, I think last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, that it's not a good idea to drink coffee on an empty stomach. So I have some fruit before the coffee. So how does that morning routine compare to yours?
There are some similarities. In some ways it's similar and a few differences. Like you, I find it tricky to get going when I wake up. So usually I don't get out of bed immediately on hearing my alarm clock.
You set an alarm, do you?
I set an alarm, yeah. Do you?
No.
You never do.
Oh.
And what if you have to get up very early? Do you just trust yourself to do it?
Because I work at home and I'm my own boss, then it's only myself I have to blame if I don't do the work. So I'm quite flexible. If I don't get up early, then I have to work late at night. So I'm usually up and awake by about 7:30, 8 o'clock without an alarm clock. Obviously, if I have an appointment, then I'll put the alarm on. But otherwise, no, I just wake up when I wake up.
Well, yeah, I guess that's similar to me. For example, Sunday, I rarely put on the alarm,
But you have early classes, so you need the alarm.
Yeah. And I don't trust myself to get up without that alarm clock. I do need to set it. So even after the alarm goes off, I don't get out of bed straight away. I just like to stay in bed for maximum 5 minutes, sometimes literally only 2 minutes, and just kind of think, okay, what have you got to do today? Stretch my body a little bit for a couple of minutes, and then I get up. But it's still not that easy for me to get going, like Craig. So every day I splash my face with water. I go to the bathroom and I splash my face with water. That means I don't exactly wash it. I just throw water on it, cold water, and that helps me wake up a little bit. Then, for many, many years, I always had the same routine, but lately it has begun to change. But I'll tell you what my routine has been up to now. To make a pot of tea, and to go with that, a spot of breakfast.
So when you say a pot of tea, does that mean you're drinking more than 1 cup?
Not necessarily. I used to drink at least 1.5, maybe 2 cups. Now, quite often, I just drink 1 cup. But here's the thing. Even though I know in advance that I only want 1 cup, I still make a pot. I don't make cups of tea. I make pots of tea at home.
I bet that goes back to your childhood and your mum making tea.
Probably does. And I am convinced, and I'm not the only person, that it doesn't taste the same if it's made in a cup. I don't like tea made in a cup. I don't like it. So even when I'm on my own, I make a pot. Even if it's only for 1 cup, I will just put enough water in for a cup and maybe a little bit more, and that's it.
Is that why you never drink tea here? Because I tend to make it in a cup. Because we do have a teapot.
No, I hadn't noticed that. No, it's like I just prefer drinking tea at home. It's nothing to do with the way you make it, because
Okay.
I like the way I make tea for myself.
You're a bit picky, a bit fussy.
Yeah. But I
Tickies,
love
mickeys.
the way you make coffee. So I drink coffee here.
It's not me, mate. It's the machine that makes it.
No. I think it's partly the person making it as well. So, by the way, I virtually never drink tea in a cafe in Spain. But first thing is, it's probably not going to be very good, let's be honest. And there's a side of me, I don't like paying all that money for what's essentially water with a cheap tea bag in it. My tea bags at home are good, or my tea leaves. I don't use the cheap ones. I use the good ones. So I object to going out and paying quite a lot of money for not good quality tea. I don't do it.
What did Maggie Smith say famously? Don't give me a tepid, warm cup of water with a weak tea bag and let me wait around for it to change colour. At my age, I just don't have time.
I like it. So I would pretty quickly, most of my life, have done this. But lately I've noticed that quite often I do a little bit of work, no more than about half an hour or possibly an hour's work before breakfast and tea sometimes. But most of my life, I've had the tea and a spot of breakfast. That's a typical collocation, a little bit of breakfast, first thing. But lately, not always. Then I'll check my diary, which is a paper diary, by the way. That's right. It is the year 2024, and I use a paper diary.
So do I.
Yeah, I've written
Well,
that.
a combination. I use paper and digital together.
Okay. So I check my diary because I usually know first thing in the morning when I get up what I've got to do. But just to be on the safe side, I check because it'll be written in my diary. And then I get cracking.
What does that mean?
So to get cracking, if you think about when you cook, particularly an omelette, you need to start by cracking the eggs. If you don't crack eggs, you can't do anything, right? So to get cracking means get started to do what you have to do. Stop thinking about it. Just do it. Like crack those eggs if you want to make an omelette. So I get cracking. If I have any class to do, I'll do that. Sometimes I do early in the morning, or maybe other work. And if I get a chance, not every day, but most days, I will do some exercise.
And what does that involve? Walking, gym?
Sometimes I go to the gym, but I often just do exercise at home. So I have an exercise mat and I'll lie on that and I'll move around and I'll stand up and do things with my shoulders and my legs.
To music?
Yeah, with music. But not the typical music in gyms. Yes, like I tend to end up doing exercise to funky music. I'm probably one of the few people in Valencia that ends up usually doing exercise to kind of late 70s or early funky music is how I usually do my exercise. What about you?
No. I usually walk. I'll come to my exercise routine in a second, but that's usually later in the day. But no, I usually walk and listen to podcasts. But I get it. I understand that it will really help you move your body listening to music. Let's just take a break for a couple of minutes so that I can tell you how to improve your spoken English. Now, if you need to speak more confidently and effectively, if you feel nervous and get stuck sometimes when you need to speak in English, I think my conversation fluency course can help you. You'll be speaking on Zoom with me and a small group of lovely, motivated students, and together we'll help you take your speaking to the next level. Does that sound good? If it does, send me an email for more details to Craig, C-R-A-I-G, at inglespodcast.com, and I'll let you know about prices, dates, and more details about the courses. It's great that you listen to this podcast, and I really hope we're helping you to improve your English. But in my opinion, you need to be proactive and take your spoken English one step further if you want to communicate effectively in English. So send me an email, Craig at inglespodcast.com, and I really look forward to seeing you on the inside. Thanks for listening. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Okay, so you've had your tea, a spot of breakfast, you've checked your diary, done a bit of work maybe, and then your exercise. Now we're moving up to lunchtime. Tell us about your lunchtime routine. What does that look like?
Okay, so of course, not every day is the same, but most days, luckily, I get the chance to prepare something to eat at home. I say luckily because I actually prefer eating at home, particularly on a weekday, Monday to Friday, than eating out. I prefer it, and it doesn't bother me to have to prepare something to eat because I like to have a decent meal in the middle of the day if I can. Remember that we're talking about life in Spain. So the main meal of the day in Spain is in the middle of the day. Usually the evening meal is a little bit lighter. So I prepare something to eat. Hopefully I have a decent meal. And then what? Well, like Craig, I have a slightly unusual timetable. Many of my classes are early in the morning, so I may have a class at 8 or 8:30 in the morning and a few other things. And I might then have a period when I don't have so much to do from about 12:30 or 1 to about 3 or 4. So after I've had my midday meal, which hopefully I've prepared at home, I quite often listen to a podcast. Or sometimes I even listen to the podcast while I'm having the meal. The great thing about podcasts, isn't it? If any of you are eating or cooking right now, you know what I'm talking about. There's nothing to look at. You just have to listen. So I will often cook and eat to podcasts. What about you?
Do you have a siesta? Do you have a midday nap?
I used to sometimes, but these days almost never. I think that's another sign that I'm getting old. Apparently, older people sleep less than younger people. Did you know that?
That's surprising. I thought older people would have those naps during the day more and maybe sleep less at night.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah. If I start doing that, then I know I'm getting really old. If you sleep frequently, but not very long, and at night you don't sleep long, then you know you're old. I haven't got to that stage yet, but I'm sure it's coming soon.
I'm actually surprised that you don't nap after lunch. I thought you might do, but okay.
As I say, I used to, but I got out of the habit. And hopefully, but not always, if I'm a good boy, I will wash up after I've had my meal. In other words, I will do the dishes.
Well, my lunchtime routine is similar in some respects, but also there are some differences. So we're looking at maybe 12 midday. That is my exercise time. So I stop what I'm doing round about midday and I go for a walk. That could be a brisk walk along the beach, along the promenade next to the beach. There are some stairs, so if I'm feeling particularly energetic, I'll run up and down some stairs for about 20 minutes to get the blood pumping and do some cardio. And while I'm doing this, I'm listening to podcasts. So that's my podcast time. I like listening to different podcasts while I'm walking. Very occasionally music, but usually the spoken word. At 2:00, that's the Spanish time to eat. There's a sit-down meal, and that is a regular thing. That's when I sit down with my wife and we eat together, because we don't always have breakfast and dinner together because of different schedules. So we always try to have lunch together if possible. She cooks, I clear up. Clear up means taking things into the kitchen, making sure the kitchen is tidy and clean, washing the dishes, etc. And then I have a nap, which is different to you. So a siesta for me is about 15, maybe 20 minutes. I'll sit in a comfortable chair, close my eyes, and actually sleep for probably no more than 10. So it's just a relaxing time. The food's digesting. I might nod off, which means to sleep for a short period, close my eyes, and then back to work. So now we're moving to the afternoon routine. After my siesta, that's when I have a nice cup of tea, which is a common collocation, to have a nice cup of tea. Those words like to go together, don't they? Let's have a nice cup of tea. And notice the pronunciation. British people wouldn't normally say cup of tea. We'd say cup of tea or cuppa. Cup of tea. Have a nice cup of tea. That's my time for catching up on emails. And in the afternoon, I tend not to do such focused work because it's difficult to concentrate after a heavy meal. I'm still feeling a bit sleepy maybe. So that's when I do my mindless tasks. Tasks that are not very difficult. They're not very taxing, you could say, taxing. So that might be audio editing, replying to students' feedback, organizing papers, doing administration, that kind of thing. So I don't need to think too much and concentrate too much. It's not the same as lesson planning, which takes more brain power and more concentration. I'll check my to-do list to see how I'm doing during the day, if I have any urgent tasks. And then more often than not, which means usually, more often than not, I teach in the afternoon and evening, so that's when I start my classes. What about you, Reza?
So my afternoon routine after I've had lunch is very often, if not immediately after lunch, then 20 minutes, half an hour after lunch, I'll have a coffee. Not always, but very often. I'll have one after lunch. But I've even been avoiding that recently if I have a late lunch, because I've noticed that, strangely, as I get older, coffee is affecting me more. If I have it any later than about 3 or 4, I find it hard to sleep.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's age mates. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was younger, it didn't bother me so much. I quite often had my final coffee at 6 in the afternoon, evening, but I could sleep all right. But now, if it's much later than 3, then it's tricky.
Yeah.
So I'll have a coffee usually after lunch. That's also a good time to do corrections, if I have any. Or
that means correcting writing, you mean?
Correcting writing, yeah. By do corrections, teachers mean like correcting writing or tests or things like that. And just generally get ready for classes. So apart from the correcting, preparing classes, looking at what's coming up in the syllabus, programming when I'm going to do things, that type of thing. Also, as regards my job, I will reply to work emails. So a work email is an email which is connected to your job. So there are certain things, as you know, that you can't leave for too long or you'll get into trouble with your boss. So I reply to work emails around about then as well. And then if I have a bit of time left over, and I often do, I like to catch up on the news by either watching it on TV or possibly on some internet channel, or reading about it again on internet. I must admit I don't read the printed press very much these days. So I like to catch up on the news, not every day, but when I've got time.
And I always know when Reza's catching up on the news because he always sends me an angry message on WhatsApp saying, have you seen what's happening here? Or you seen what's going on there? So I know when Reza's been watching the news because I usually get a message about how angry he is.
I think you're exaggerating. I wouldn't say angry, indignant and surprised, but I don't get angry about news.
I know, I'm joking.
I don't get angry, but it's true that I do sometimes WhatsApp people. I send a WhatsApp text about really unusual or bizarre things in the news. So that's my afternoon. So then evening time, because I'm an English teacher and I do work with children and adults, I'm inevitably going to have work, so I'll go to work some stage in the afternoon.
That's teaching in the academy, right?
Yeah, teaching in the academy, or sometimes going to people's houses, sometimes online, but thankfully, and I do mean thankfully, more in person, because I do prefer in person if I can. So once I've finished my work, if I had to go outside, then I'll get home from work, and I like to slip into more comfortable clothes.
Or like a dress, a nightie, sexy nightie, stockings.
Not that. And stop now, Craig, or we'll lose our listeners forever. If some people have visualized that, they probably will never, ever want to listen to this podcast again. It is a kind of a very old-fashioned but funny cliche to say, I just want to slip into something more comfortable. And in some terrible 1960s or 70s comedy film, that will be when a woman disappears and come back wearing her very sexy clothes.
Sexy nightdress, yeah.
But there's also a less comical use of slip into. You can just slip into more comfortable clothes. So in other words, if I'm wearing trousers and a shirt, etc., I'll take that off and I'll put on loungewear, maybe even pajamas. I love wearing pajamas at home.
They're comfortable.
Yeah. But I rarely wear pajamas in bed. I'll take the pajamas off before I go to bed. The pajamas are for at home. I like sleeping in boxer shorts. I get very warm in bed, but I do like wearing pajamas at home in the evening. And also, if I have any loose ends, I tie them up.
Are we still speaking about clothes here? Or
that could be. That is a genuine misunderstanding. So to tie things up like your laces or a tie around your neck means that if it's loose, you make it tight. Yeah, so it's not flying around in the wind. But metaphorically, as an idiom, if you tie up loose ends, that means you just finish those little things which you need to finish to be 100% completely finished. So very often, related to work again, there will be an email which has arrived at some stage in the day which needs urgent attention, so I have to reply to that. Or a student asked me, would I find some information about something and email it to them? So I tie up little loose ends like that. When that's done, I will prepare something quick to eat. Earlier, I mentioned a decent meal, and Craig spoke about a sit-down meal. I might have a decent sit-down meal in the evening, but I'll be happy if it were just a snack. And I might even bring the food I've prepared into the living room and watch TV or listen to music while I'm eating, which is something I rarely do in the middle of the day, but I might do it in the evening. I might even catch a film. If you catch a film, that's a very colloquial way of saying watch a film in a very casual way. So I might look at Netflix or HBO or something like that and stream something and generally chill out. And then when I feel tired, inevitably, I turn in. I don't change my appearance. I don't turn into something weird. To turn in is a phrasal verb which means to go to bed. And it's very often used when people are making their excuses. When you're a group of people together and you're tired and you want to go to bed, you say, well, excuse me, everyone, but I'm just going to turn in now. That means I'm going to go to bed. And that's me. That's my day finished. What about your evening routine, Craig?
Well, like you, when I start to move into the evening time, I'm, as you said, tying up loose ends. I'm wrapping up work. To wrap up, that's with a W, W-R-A-P, is finishing up things. We use that phrasal verb up to show completion. So yeah, I can say I finish my work, but if I finish it up, I finish it completely. I wrap things up. And then I start looking ahead. What have I got tomorrow morning? Have I got a busy morning? So I kind of plan ahead a little what I'm going to do the following day, and also reflect on what I've done this day. So I'm always amazed at how little I actually got done during the day, but I find it useful to reflect and think back and say, okay, I need to carry this forward to tomorrow. For example, any fairly urgent work that didn't get done needs to be re-diaried or planned for the following day. And then I'll grab a bite to eat. So similar to Reza, it's a light meal, not a heavy meal. It's a light meal, some bread, some cheese, something very light. So I grab a bite to eat and then settle down to watch something on TV or on the computer, or settle down to read a book. And that's usually around 9-ish. So that ish, I-S-H, that's approximately 9-ish, 9:30-ish is when I settle down, which is relaxing, sitting down. I unwind, or I can also say wind down. And another phrasal verb, kick back, relaxing, recharging my batteries, resting. And then eventually, Reza said, turn in. I turn in around 11, 11:30, maybe 12. I hit the sack. To hit the sack is another colloquial expression to go to bed. So hit the sack, turn in, go to bed.
Craig, do you prefer having a fixed routine or a flexible schedule?
I prefer a fixed routine. I'm a creature of habit. Unfortunately, it's not possible in my line of work because, as you know, you're constantly getting feedback from students. Sometimes lessons get moved or changed. It's a very difficult job to plan. Every day is different, which is variety, I suppose. But it also means that you can't really plan a day or a week and know exactly what's going to happen as the week unfolds. Is that the same for you?
It's exactly the same, isn't it? And as you know, once you finally are getting used to, you're getting accustomed to your new routine, the end of that term arrives, and then you have a little break, and the next term could be a completely different timetable.
Yeah.
and you have to get used to that. So teachers of English are constantly having our timetables changed, and this affects our routine inevitably.
Yeah, it's not set in stone, which means it's flexible, it's spontaneous, it moves, and it's difficult for teachers to stick to a routine. It might be easier if you work in a state school, then you have regular hours. But for us, foreign language teachers, independent teachers, it's difficult to stick to a routine.
What's the most productive part of your day? In other words, when do you get most useful things done?
In the morning, without a doubt. Between, let's say, 8:30, 9 o'clock and 12 midday, when I start exercising, definitely those 3 hours are golden for me. That's the time when my focus is on work. I'm not distracted. I don't feel tired. So that's when I'm most productive. What about you?
Mid-morning.
At the same time then?
Yeah, not first thing in the morning, but mid-morning. Yeah, provided I haven't gone to bed really late, or provided I don't have a hangover. A hangover is when you've drunk too much or something like that, then usually mid-morning. So I need a couple of hours to get started, but then I'm in form.
Is that your favorite time of the day, mid-morning, would you say?
That or last thing at night. I also like.
I like
when you've
last thing
got
at night.
everything done, you've tied up all the loose ends, all your obligations have been taken care of, and if you're not going immediately to bed, well, that's 100% me time, which is great, of course.
I agree, except when I'm podcasting with you, of course, in which case this is the most favorable time of the day for me.
True. And we try and do it generally mid-morning, don't we? So
Yeah.
we maximize our enjoyment.
When we're mostly awake and not sleeping over the microphone. So how does your routine change on a weekend or on a holiday? Does it change very much? Do you lay in bed longer, for example?
Yeah, definitely. I don't set an alarm clock for Sundays unless it's absolutely necessary. On Saturday morning, I work, so I do set an alarm clock. In fact, Saturday morning is my earliest start of the day, in fact, usually. And quite often I find myself eating at times when I don't really want to during the week to fit around my timetable.
Yeah.
So I don't do that on a Sunday. On a Sunday, I eat when I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
I get the chance to bring forward lunchtime or delay it if I got up really late and I had a brunch, let's say, at 11:30, well, then I'll probably not eat anything more until, let's say, 6 o'clock in the evening, and I might not have any dinner. I like doing that type of thing. And you?
I work weekends, especially Sunday. That's a busy day for me. I've got classes in the evening, group classes. I've got private classes. So Saturday and Sunday are work days for me. Friday's a bit lighter. I tend to be more flexible. I also work, but like you, I tend to be more relaxed. I have dinner when I want to have dinner and lunch when I want to have lunch. So Friday, maybe Saturday's a bit more relaxed, but unless I'm on holiday, unless I'm traveling and I've gone to see my sister, for example, or we have visitors, every day of the week, 7 days a week, they're pretty much the same, which I'm not complaining. I love it. I love what I do, but I don't get what people might call a traditional weekend break. But that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Craig, I guess the age old, that means people always talk about it, and it's nothing new. The age old question has to be asked here. You can look at the world in two ways. Do you live to work or work to live?
That's an interesting question. I would put myself somewhere in the middle. I enjoy my work a lot, so I don't mind working, but I don't only work. That's not the most important thing. So it has a huge importance because I like it. It also pays the bills, but it's not. It's somewhere in the middle. What is it the same for you?
I'd say I'm a mixture, but I'm more of a work to live person, although a bit of a mixture, but more of a work to live.
So it's a means to an end, you could say.
Yeah. Put it like this. If I won some competition, a lottery or something like that tomorrow and suddenly became
Would you stop working completely?
I'd continue to do these podcasts.
Pleased to hear it.
I wouldn't give many more classes, I have to admit. I'd just do them purely because I wanted to. I wouldn't be for the money. And I'd travel all the time. I'd see the world, I have to admit.
I think I'd travel more too. Well, now it's your turn to practice your English. How do you get through your day? Are your daily routines very different from ours? If they are, we would love to hear about them. Now, we have been telling you our days in detail, our routines in detail. You have about 90 seconds to tell us what your day is like, which is a bit of a challenge. Try to use some of the vocabulary from this podcast and tell us how you spend your day and what your routines are like. You can do that by going to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/English podcast. The link for that and all of the vocabulary will be in the show notes for this episode at inglespodcast.com/547. Reza, how can people contact us by email if they prefer to write?
You could email Craig. He's at this address, craig@inglespodcast.com, or me. My address is belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're a Spanish native speaker and you want to improve your English with free and paid resources, go to the Mansion Inglés website where you will see lots of Spanish support. That's mansioningles.com, and the store with products for sale is at store.mansioningles.net.
As always, a big thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Patreon, Patreon, is a program through which people donate money. And as a way of saying thank you to our donors through Patreon, we give them instant access to the audio transcriptions. We've been doing that for quite a few years now. But also, as an added bonus recently, we started to offer live Zoom chats to our Patreon supporters so you can practice your speaking. If you're interested in joining the program, have a look at the link in the show notes, which is patreon.com/Inglespodcast.
We can't thank all of you individually for being a Patreon supporter, but we will say hello and thank you to our latest supporters this month, and they are Ricard Sampere, thank you very much, Azucena de la Cruz, thank you too, and Maria Rosa Laura Jimenez. Thank you to you as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend so that more people can listen. And we don't know what we're talking about next week, but we will be talking about something. So please send us your ideas and suggestions for future podcasts. Until next time, thank you for listening this week. Have a lovely week ahead. It's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.